So, we're no longer together.
Sadly, it's so much better in person.
It is.
I
It
know.
is. And we had coffee and, but now we have other things.
I'm grateful for technology and the ability to be able to speak to somebody and see someone, across the ocean, but nothing beats in-person conversation.
Not really. I think that's not really. Speaking about in-person conversations, the soiree in Salem, the Alexandrian Soirée in Salem was really, really nice.
Okay.
I thought that it was very well attended. This is the thing that I love about Salem, is that there is so many surprises, right? So there was this couple from Denmark that came in because the space that we were in was contiguous to a store.
Yeah.
And they opened the doors of the store towards the space that we were at. And they were there. And they strolled in and very curious, young couple.
Yeah.
And I think that they had something in Boston that they came for. And then they got curious about what we were doing. And I told them what it was, that it was an Alexandrian soiree. They had no clue what Alexandrian was.
Exactly.
And I had to tell them, that it was this type of witchcraft and, where it came from very, very quickly in like 2 minutes. And they said, can we attend? And of course, and they did. And it was very dynamic. There was a lot of questions that were very, very interesting that I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, I would agree. I guess I should not have been surprised in the sense of how well attended it was, being that we were in Salem, in the quote unquote witch city. But yeah, there were a lot of people there, some who are practitioners, right? There have been some initiates, and then those who are seeking as well. And I was really surprised. It was great to have, a young couple from Denmark and taking advantage of that opportunity. And they even got into the conversation as well. And I think you're absolutely right. And I'm glad that a lot of people did have questions. So it wasn't like a lecture. So a lot of people had questions, and it was interesting, the questions that they brought up too.
Yes. So the idea of the Alexandrian soiree is not really a lecture. It shouldn't be a lecture. It should be a question and answer from the people that are going, and keeping the conversation flow as the questions are answered and more questions are coming. And it was very interesting because it was such a diverse group of people, I thought.
Yeah.
We had a Satanist, we had a ceremonial magician.
We did have a Satanist. And I think,
Yes.
and my first question to the Satanist was, when we were meeting before the soiree, kind of started. I'm like, oh, so you don't believe in any deity structure? So it was an interesting conversation. But before we get onto that, can you, for especially those who might be listening to us, who are seekers, who are just flirting with the Alexandrian tradition, what is an Alexandrian soiree? And what's the history there?
So this was something that was done by Alex and Maxine Sanders in the 70s. And it's a model that actually, and I'm not sure exactly where it came from, and it probably came from the meetings that Alex would hold in his own living room, actually. That people would come and attend, and they would be invitations or just, you would just come in with a friend and listen to what Alex would have to say. And I think then the pub also was, I'm just, trying to come up with what was the influence and how they set up this. And the soirees were then later on set up like this. So it was Alex and Maxine, and people would come and they would ask questions, and they would answer the questions, and that would be how it came about. And it was a wonderful way of understanding what the tradition was, asking questions about their own, fears or
Yeah,
well,
truly, in the 1970s. Truly.
yeah. And I'm sure they had a lot of people who defy them, that went there just to defy them.
Yeah.
And to say, are you aware that you're going to hell or something like that?
Yes. Yeah.
Because these are public, you can incur in that, and so we do need to be properly prepared for these things, as always. And we are. So if there is a heckler or something like that, we are prepared to deal with it. But the thing is that this is for the seeker. So if people, and whomever comes, right? So it's just a very interesting way of establishing a dialogue between the seeker and the initiates.
Yeah.
Because, it is private. So all of the things are private that we do. And there is no, let me just go to a circle and try it out. So because of that, there are people that might be searching for things and they go and ask questions. People sometimes call this a very, very insidious way,
For like proselytizing?
proselytizing.
Okay.
But it really isn't, because if we don't have anyone, then we don't have anyone. We announce this once in a while. And we do have a lot of initiates that go just to go. And all of the initiates are going. And so if we don't have anyone with questions, then we'll just drink a glass of wine and have a good time. But if you do have questions, then you'll go. And so proselytizing is really not this. Proselytizing is actively publicizing and evangelizing other people, which is not really what we're doing here. So whomever wants to come from their own free will.
Yes.
We're not really
We're not knocking on doors.
people's doors, right? Yeah. So so that's where it comes from, and it's a wonderful thing that is done all over the world now, and it really works, and it's a wonderful time all the time.
And this must have been really incredibly revolutionary in Maxine and Alex's day, because the Gardnerians don't do this, correct? So to be able to ask questions, here they're opening up this sort of a public forum, while I would imagine, the Gardnerians are much more closed.
I think that the Gardnerians had something called pubmoots.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be, but I don't know if it was at the same time that Alex and Maxine were doing this. I think that Alex and Maxine were very much in the forefront of this information kind of thing. So informing about the craft, and that's why Alex and Maxine were so generous with their time and space, their own living room and things like that, because, they would meet in their own living room with all these people, sometimes strangers, right? So
yeah,
and they would, open the door and invite them in, and so I don't know. I mean, courage, right? They were very courageous.
Very great.
To open their door, like, come on in.
Exactly. I don't think we would do today.
No, and they had then what this actually did. I think it was very, very interesting, because it was they had like journalists coming in saying that they were seekers, but they were not. Police coming in and saying that they were seekers. Gardnerians coming in, actually. So they had all sorts of people coming in. And trying to get some what are they up to, right? So they wanted to experience this new thing that Alex and Maxine were doing, and if I think that then they begin to do later on. I think Gardnerians begin to do, and I'm not sure about the history of this in the Gardnerian tradition, so I don't know. I'm speculating, but I know that they did pubmoots, and I know that they do meet in London like that as well. Privately and or publicly. So I think that they caught on the movement.
And what did you think about the questions that were asked?
There was one. What was it?
Oh yeah. So whether or not we invoke or work with sort of a pantheon, right?
Yes.
So do we work with, Hermes, and do we work with Diana, and do we work with all of these different gods in our structure?
I thought that it was very interesting, because he was by the nature of the definition of Satanism, right? So they don't really have any deity that they would worship or that they would,
Yes.
And so it was interesting that he was interested in that particular piece, and we answer them. And one of the questions that I thought that was very good, it came from that lovely couple, and it was, what do we to help the community to heal, or if there is anything that we do to help the immediate community to heal, or any work that is done, or what is the kind of work that we do in that. Do you remember this?
They were asking about, what kind of things that we do to help the community, help the environment.
The environment,
she had asked, since we are, quote unquote, sort of a nature-oriented religion, which is debatable. What do we do? And also, how has like climate change affected our rituals, so in terms of the wheel of the year?
That's right.
Right. So therefore, and I had brought up the notion of like October in New England, back in the 80s was extremely, extremely cold. And as a child, you would always be disappointed because you'd have to cover up your Halloween costume in your winter jacket. And that is just really not the case anymore in the last 10 years, where Halloween actually can be really quite balmy. And therefore, it's great. You can wear your Halloween costume without your jacket on. And whether or not that affects our ritual.
That was a very good question, I think. And I talked about not only that, but I talked about how the work of a coven can have a repercussion in the population around, and in terms of lifting the vibrational frequency of around in the vicinity, in the neighborhood, and cities sometimes, and depending on the extent of your work, and we talked about that. We talked about the work that you do, and depending on the work that you do, you can decrease crime, you can increase jobs, and increase the overall vibration of the community around you. And this is just for you just for doing the work that you're doing. You're not really there is specific work for this. If there is a problem in your neighborhood, the group can.
And I think that's this is a whole other topic of interesting conversation, is what happens to the environment when there is a working coven there.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So therefore, even if you're surrounded by non-witches,
let's just rephrase this. When there is a good coven in the vicinity.
Yes, let's qualify it. Yeah. And there is a good, working coven.
Good working coven.
Yes. And then how could it not, I would say, right? How could it not affect the immediate surroundings with the energy that is being raised and what is, being worked and what's being invoked, and et cetera?
Well, I can tell you one thing. We live here near, the Covenstead is near a church that it happens to be the church that makes all of the weddings ceremonies in the town that we are in. And I can tell you one thing: the amount of weddings that are done have increased enormously since.
Really?
Yes. And I'm not saying that it's because of us, but I really feel that it's dramatic. And the reason why I'm saying this, it's because when we arrived, there were one Saturday morning. That would be it. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's it. Every Saturday there would be one morning, Saturday morning wedding. And then now there is this, so the bells are constantly, ringing. And the reason why, it's because sometimes there's 3 weddings.
Oh my gosh.
At the same, in the same church. So one in the morning, one after that, and then one before lunch.
Oh my gosh. That is really, really interesting, because, I think you should take credit. for this.
Okay.
But, but in the sense of, some people go, well, it's maybe the population pool. These are lots of, marriageable ages going on.
Yes,
But the fact that they are choosing that church because they do have choices.
they do. And
City.
yeah,
The fact that
yeah.
they're choosing that church is really,
Mhm.
really interesting. So what
Yeah.
are they picking up unconsciously or psychically? And I would say too, is that, churches, and I don't know, I don't want to be offensive, but churches can be really sad places.
They can.
Where people are going oftentimes in their most, desperate moments for prayer, right? Prayer for healing or
Right.
whatnot, or funerary services. There's actually not that much joy that happens in a church, but for christenings and baptisms and weddings. So it's
Right.
really, really interesting that this has become a place of a lot of joy that's happening in that structure.
It's very interesting because this is also the church where you see that the masses are given to people that died, and we had the mortuary house right next to it, on the other side of the street, and then the cemetery, of course. So you occasionally hear the sad bell,
Yeah.
right? Because we
Yeah.
know that somebody, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a lot more of, and you might argue that we the work that we're doing, not purposely, towards this goal, but
Yeah.
because of the vibrations of the energy that have an impact in people around us,
Yeah.
we might have caused some lovebirds to decide to marry, and
Truly. Right.
you know what I mean? So we don't know.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see that, and that was one of the questions that we had in the Alexandrian Soirée in Salem,
Mhm.
which is very interesting. And then that thing about the Wheel of the Year, which is truly, I mean, and thinking about, and I said this as well, thinking about other countries, like for instance, Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, things like that, what changes, and things are changing.
Yeah.
Some of the currents of the Wheel of the Year are becoming shorter and shorter, or fusing with others, and things are becoming very diverse and sometimes chopped, right? So it's very interesting, and it's never dull.
Yep.
And we have a Mediterranean weather here, so lots of sun, very hot, but then very cold in the winter. We don't have snow though, but it's a wonderful thing. It really is. Now, talking about weather and microclimate, Sintra had another soiree, which was very interesting as well.
And
Uh,
I would like to say, anyone listening to this,
yes,
before the end, they must visit Sintra in Portugal. What a magical city.
it is, and it's Sitra,
Yep.
Sintra,
Yep.
so that people can look it up. Portugal, and it's a beautiful, beautiful village, and literally the name comes from the Mount of the Moon. So it's and it was always very magical. Lord Byron stayed there. It's very in the uh, 19th century, early 20th century. It was a place of vacation. It's very bucolic. It's very romantic, 19th century romanticism kind of thing. The architecture is like that. It's very palace-like, and it's
Mhm.
beautiful. And it's magical at night as well. And it has the Moor's castle as well, and the palace of Pina Palace, which was the residency of the royals family in Portugal for years and years. And he has the uh, Regalera manor house, which
Yeah.
is it's full of cult symbolism and a beautiful place to visit as well. And of course, in a place like this, it couldn't go any better, right? So it was very, very nice to have the Alexandrian Soirée in Sintra. It's very interesting because coming from one to the other, right away. You can feel the changes of culture. The culture changes. So even if it's the same model, the same, and we're, mind you, we're doing this out of a model coming from the United Kingdom. So it's just very interesting to look at this thing.
Yeah.
Right. So you're taking it to America, and then you're taking it to Portugal, and it's totally different because the Portuguese people cannot just have a question and answer in front of them and sit in a place and listen to people talking. They have to actually have a beer in front of them, or some kind of wine, or some kind of in order for them to actually be able to even think.
To become social.
Yeah. So it's a different environment, different thing, different. They're very blunt in the questions they do. It's not really very polite sometimes. Most of the questions we want to answer, none of your business, but we can't do this. You know what I mean? Because they're so direct. Mm-hmm. Do you have sex inside of the circle?
Wow.
Things like that. So it's like
Americans wouldn't really do that. Although I have to say, like, and I, at the soiree in Salem, also in America, there's definitely this like witchy aesthetic, right? Where there's lots of black, there's lots of pentacles, right?
Yeah.
There's this like goth overtone that still pervades the craft here. Is that true in Portugal or no?
It is, yes. So we did the Alexandrian Soirée in the Fawn's House. It's called, in English, it's called Fawn's House, but it is just a bar. It's they call it a medieval themed bar.
Okay.
And it's literally a pub. That's what really is. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful house. It's a beautiful place. They have one of the, if not the only one actually, that it's worth going, esoteric store called Ishtar. And it's a wonderful store. It really is. And unfortunately, it's the only one in Portugal at the moment. So that it's really, truly connected. So it really is wonderful. They have books, they have incenses. The incenses are very good. And the store itself is very beautiful. So it's an amazing place altogether. So you can go have a beer and then go and buy your, atame.
Yeah. Do people walk around with big pentacle earrings? Big bat pendants?
Not really. But I saw somebody with cat ears and in black and but so there are some people. There are some people that are, and I think that the Fawn's House is actually a place where embraces the weird and the misfits and the which we will fit quite well.
Yes. Well, there are misfits. Well, there are misfits, and then there are misfits.
Oh yes, yes. Should we go there?
So yeah, well, there is a difference, and which was interesting too at the soiree in Salem. A person asked the question about like moral codes and ethics. Like, is there anything in our theology that is about sort of morals, or how does one comport oneself? And I think this was on the heels of, while we were all in conversation, this woman sort of shows up in the middle of everything in a sort of dramatic huff, and then starts swearing about how difficult it was to find the location, and that's why she's late, and really a group of strangers. And then come to find out, she is an Alexandrian high priestess, which kind of floored me in the sense of, is this how our clergy behaves? Is this how our priesthood should behave, interrupting something and swearing to a group of students and making a dramatic entrance? And, like, how do we take the crass out of the craft?
I think it comes down to good manners. And if you don't have them, you can acquire them.
You can
I can try.
you
I
can
can
acquire them. Sure.
acquire them.
Watch some YouTube videos. Yeah.
Can you please not swear in public in front of people?
Yeah, as clergy. As clergy.
As clergy. In an event that is, it's not that you just come into a restaurant and just like, oh my God, this was so difficult to find.
No.
This was an event that is, it was an event that was quite clear what the event was. And of course, but, I think
a religious event, right?
Yeah.
If this is a religious, magical event, obviously I'm being extremely judgmental, but I hold people to really high standards. And I wonder, am I being too Christian in my outlook on how one should behave? And in the sense of, I know a very wise person who said to me quite bluntly, I would much rather, as a priest of the goddess, I would much rather see you be photographed with a Catholic priest and have that be shown publicly, than be photographed with some want-to-be vampire on one arm, and then a Satanist on the other arm, just because of you being priesthood.
I think there is a very clear idea about priesthood that some of us do have, and the reason why I think it comes out of the training that we received.
Yeah.
And how to behave and how to conduct yourself in public, and or privately as well. Yeah. So, and we do have that. So people that were probably unfortunate not having that, then they lack that particular piece. And then, of course, this is also tailored to the individual. So even if you are frustrated because you were late, or because you were, being who you are and what this was, I thought that I would expect that the person would have a little bit more decorum and be a little bit more
priestly.
Make it, yes, priestly, but make it a fun thing, make it a joyful thing, and get people to laugh about you have been late, and
exactly make it into a joke, right? Be able to
joke and a little bit more of a lift, lifting people's because we were at that point, we were 10 minutes over the
10 minutes, 15 minutes in.
Yeah, and she actually interrupted me. I was actually talking at the time that she came in.
Well,
so
late happens. That's fine. Late,
late happens.
Right? Yeah. Absolutely. Like there's traffic, and you're going to Salem, the Boston area. It's a nightmare, and it was a little bit tricky to find if you didn't know where you were going. But you're exactly right. Like, then how do you enter a room late?
Yeah, how do you enter a room late?
How do we start there?
I'm going to write that book next. As an Alexandrian priest.
Yeah.
How do you enter a room late?
Yeah, exactly.
And first rule, don't swear.
Your first rule, don't swear. And I have to say, and again, this is me being really, really critical and judgy. And I think this is also part of the reason why I am kind of more of a, secret initiate, because I think in a lot of ways, witchcraft is seen in that light, like the way that woman behaved and the crassness that is shown in the craft. It's almost like guilty by association. Like, do I really want my, professional colleagues and peers to know that I'm involved in this religion when so many people represent the religion like that?
I actually thought that when she came in like that, it was almost like a wave of awakening. Everybody was very, oh, this is so, here's the high priest and the high priestess and this and that, and this is the Alexandrian. And then suddenly there's this volcano that came in and just kind of like shaked everybody for a moment. And I thought that was brilliant. I thought that it was, Oh, we're still on Earth.
Yeah.
So I thought that it was like it shocked everybody, I
Yeah.
think. That was a good thing, I think, because people needed to kind of come in and have that contrast. Because, this is the thing. If you only have one thing and you don't have the other, then you can't really compare the two and side with one that is the one that you really want to be or how you want to behave. So I think that was actually perhaps a good thing that she came late and cursed, because then people saw the other side of things that they didn't really want to hear. I think that some people actually wanted to kind of like, block their ears because they didn't really want listening to it's like, imagine somebody coming in the middle of a mass, right?
Yes.
And
Well,
then suddenly somebody says, from the back of the church.
yeah, and I think that's my issue. I think you really hit it on the head, is that, yeah, imagine someone doing that inside of a church during a mass. And I don't think it would happen, because there is a gravitas and a seriousness behind, in that, right? And I don't think that's always applied to the craft. And I think this is why, you know what I mean? But this is what I get really upset about, is that I consider us priesthood.
Right.
Like priesthood of the ancient temples. Like, would an Egyptian priest enter into the temple of Isis and start swearing? Right? Would a priestess of Athena do the same thing in the Parthenon? Well, no, right? These are sacred spaces. Even if that soiree that wasn't a sacred space, but I would argue that the conversation was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Think you gave me a little bit of a idea, because every time on Saturday that I pass by this church, there's like, beautiful music coming from I just want to go into that door and just yell,
oh my God.
and see what happens.
Yeah, you're all going to hell, man.
But
right?
just like yell and then go away.
Please don't. And I think this is why, like, I so like love and respect, like you and Maxine, who are just, great faces and champions, right, of the craft. And if you shock, and I'm talking really about both of you, if you do shock, and I think sometimes intentionally so, and I think it's important to shock, it's done with seriousness and authority. Do you understand what I mean by that, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, it's done with levels. It's not just like, oh, I'm just going to come in here and just swear like a sailor to shock people.
No, because then it's common.
Then it's common,
right? So
I don't want my priesthood to be common.
But this is why I thought that was important, because this woman brought in the crass. It was brilliant. Because then it gave us a little bit of the contrast between what was going on and what was, they were all of the people. There was this woman, remember that there was this very lovely woman that asked about the differences. She was very confused about the two traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to give them a little bit of a history run through in 2 minutes.
Yeah, right, about Gardnerian versus like how
many
traditional, British traditional traditions are there.
The information is out, right? But I think that they are now beginning to understand what the Alexandrian tradition is. Books are out. Brian has books out as well. His second book just came out as well.
Yeah.
And is available on the stores. So more and more books are out as
serious books, right?
Serious books. So I think that there's no excuse now to what is Gardnerian, what is Alexandrian, because basically it's part of the community and it's part of the landscape of things now. I think that's not what is that.
Yeah,
it's not a question that will come out. And it was lovely. So I thought that that soiree was very, very good.
Me too.
And
And even in that situation, right? Because it brought up
yeah,
other questions, and I agree. It was really lively,
yes,
which was great, which was great to see. But speaking too about like comportment, and how one, comports oneself in the craft. And what do you think about people and maybe even an obsession with cursing? Like, oh, I'm going to get that person, right? And I'm going to curse them. And I have known a high priest who made it very well known that he kept coffins on hand. And when I say that, I mean, little wooden coffins that you could buy, for example, here in the United States at Michael's, which is a craft store. And during Halloween, they'll sell little decorative, coffins that you can paint. And that they kept this on hand just in case they needed to put somebody in a coffin, which presumably I would, interpret as killing them. What do you think about that? What do you think about curses and cursing and in the craft?
we do teach them
Okay.
to some, and I think this is very old. This is nothing new. People like to get even, or people want to get some. And this, if you think about historically in terms of the practices of traditional witchcraft, for instance, in the many countries in the world, including Portugal, that is part of their witchcraft. It's cursing and hexing and what have you, binding, very, very common. And it's the 80s that just kind of came in and just kind of dusted off all of these things that were very common at the time: health, wealth, and then affairs of the heart. And of course, in the affairs of the heart, there would be, I want you to kill that woman because I want that man, or I want you to, So all of this is something that was always part of humanity. This is nothing new. This is nothing that just came out of New Orleans just now. And, even the practices of New Orleans have thousands and thousands of years of history in them. So this is something that has been with humankind since the beginning of time.
True.
So, it is, normally things will kind of like, resolve themselves without recurring to anything like that. But we do teach it, because sometimes you need to actually know. Some people play a lot on paranoia, for instance, and they will send you things when you didn't do anything to them.
Right.
And you're being attacked without, you're going about your business, and you're being attacked by somebody that, wants to retribute what you said.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So you need to know these things. You need to know, it's not that we do the cursing, but we need to know how it's done so that we can defend and counteract to that. Cursing is something that is very, and we talked a little bit about this because of the unfortunate, and
yes.
there are black covens. There are covens who do these curses, and they work, and that's their speciality. They do all kinds of work, actually, and we call it the black covens, because that's not really something that is going towards the progression of life and life force. So we call them black covens, but it's something that is done, and it always was done in witchcraft. This whole idea that, oh, we don't curse, we don't do anything to harm anyone. That was always done in witchcraft. Either you liked it or not, it was always done. From Egypt to Greece to Roman times to Mesopotamia to all of there's archaeological evidence of the katadesmoi, all of these things.
Those little tablets, right? Little tablets.
Tablets, the katadesmoi. And it was done. It was done, and there's texts of this with evidence that this was done. So this is nothing new. It was not invented in the witchcraft movement of the 20th century. It was actually done before. And of course, we know better because we know that if you do engage in these practices, and these practices are more and more today, I see this in social media. I mean, TikTok is full of people showing you how to curse people in different religious areas, especially in Portugal, and because of where I am now. If I go to TikTok, a lot of things come through from Brazil. There's a lot of people from Brazil, from South America, teaching you how to curse somebody, how to and there's this other coven somewhere in England, I guess, that is on TikTok, and they teach all kinds of things. And of course, it's not Alexandrian, it's not anything like that. They're eclectic, but still, I mean, there's more and more these things are becoming common.
Yeah.
So it's no longer the exception. Everyone want to get even, everyone to, you just go to TikTok and look at it and then do it. And then if you happen to be efficient, what they don't teach, and this is what I think that it's very, very, and the difference between us and the others is that they don't teach the consequences of this.
There's this idea of like the law of three, which is not true in the sense of, this karmic, instant karmic retribution. But there are consequences to cursing, and which I want you to explain what are those consequences. But then another factor I also want to bring up is I don't know if I want to really spend any of my time or energy or break bread with people who are obsessed with cursing. And I think that I see that as a rise in social media, this obsession with dark magic, quote unquote, or cursing. Like, is that someone that you would want to initiate? Is that someone that you would want to have in your coven?
I don't think so. But then again, I think that the diseases and mental illness of the 21st century, actually, is anxiety.
Yeah.
A lot of anxiety. People get like a lot of anxiety. And then with kind of like brushes of paranoia. So there's a whole lot in magical groups. There's a whole lot talking about magical population all across the board. You have this. You have people who are paranoid because there are things that their neighbors are doing or whatever. There's all of this, and anxiety as well. And if you feel something, you're in the kitchen, you're cooking, and then suddenly one egg just drops on the floor. Oh my God.
Well,
it's like that. So
they stub their toe and they're like, I'm cursed. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Everything has a magical reason. Yeah.
Right. So this is a paranoia of the 21st century in magical population. And I think that this is why people are really kind of searching for this and feeding into this, thinking that they were being attacked, or they were being I'm getting sick, somebody did something to me, or I don't have luck, and then somebody did something to me. This is something that has been occurred in the whole magical population for a long, long, long time.
Yeah.
And that's why you see all of these curses coming up, and these informationals about cursing. But the danger of this is there's no explanation about the consequences of this, which is, of course, reversing of your own evolution as a soul. So, and imagine the thousands of people that have access to this information now, and they might be very bad at it, but they might be even very good at it. And suddenly you'll have this person that had no clue because they have no training on this, and they have no clue what they're doing, and they are engaging in an activity that will stop their evolution spiritually for just one thing that they did, and they don't know and then things start to happen.
Yeah.
Then things start to happen, and it's like it's a snowball, right? Because then things start to happen. They do another one because they think that they, so it's a whole paranoia. I think that magical population right now all over the world. I'm not talking about the United States only or anybody in particular, but I'm just saying there is this paranoia going around. If people were so invested in bringing up the light and bringing up the frequency of their work, and carrying on with their work in their own groups, and cease to concern about what others are doing against them, then maybe we would be a little bit better.
Yeah.
Maybe we wouldn't have, all of this nonsense going on.
Seriously, I think you hit it. You hit the nail on the head in the sense of, as priesthood, we always want to sort of raise the vibrations, right? Raise the frequency. We want to attain like the highest, right? The highest realms. And when I see someone obsessed with cursing, or someone who feels completely out of control in their life, and therefore seeking control and thinking that the craft, right, or magic will bring that to them, I think just the opposite happens, right? So therefore, it's the lowering of the frequency, it's the lowering of the vibration. And I don't think we're being hyperbolic when, if you didn't have mental illness before, doing such things can certainly create it.
Oh yes,
you know what I mean? Like, literally, people can go mad.
Oh yes, they do, and I've seen this over and over and over again, where magical practitioners actually go insane. Yeah, and it's not the first time that I'm saying this, and I have seen this, and I'm sure that people that are listening to us, they know that this is true.
Wow.
People go mad, they go crazy. They don't really, and that's the price. That's the price of it. You will just begin to go crazy. Paranoia will increase. But I think that because of the society that we live in and the time that we live in a society that it's very, very quick. Everything is rushed. Everything is very, so anxiety is pulsating all the time in everyone. I mean, everyone has some degree of anxiety.
Of course. We all do. Right?
But there's a lot, because of this whole thing about the anxiety in the world, because things are so quick. I think that there is always this bubbling of mental illness and anxiety that then comes, this other problems of, you think that people are doing things against you, always looking over your shoulder. All of those things are a product of our society. And then, of course, what is searched for is cursing, instead of let's protect ourselves. There's this whole thing about, let's fight. And I think that, it has to be related with the bubbling of wars in the world and things like that. All of this energy, like anything else in the world, if you have that, let's just say the war, that is going on, that has repercussions throughout Europe.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of energy.
Yes.
The deaths and the screams and all of these things are happening, and they do revibrate throughout the land. It's not only in there, it goes and travels.
Yeah.
So I think that, and this is why people are feeling awful. Some people, they're very sensitive. Because of this. In other words, I think that cursing and this payback kind of thing, and this anxiety and this warlike energy that's going on in the world at the moment, can eventually get people, because we're all connected, whether we want it or not.
Exactly, whether we like it or not. If you believe the divine exists in everyone, right?
We're all connected.
We're all connected.
Yeah. So that, I think it's a product of the times.
Yeah.
And
I think this was, I don't know if it was a couple episodes ago, but this was on Covendom with Brian Kane and Levi Rowland and Ellie Barnes. And for those listeners out there listening to us and you haven't gone to Covendom, I recommend going and checking out Covendom on YouTube. And I think it was Brian who said, like, if you're doing the work and you're connecting to divinity, then that in many ways protects you from curses or protects you from,
Oh, yes.
right,
Yes.
from these errant energies created by war, right? For example, and
Yes.
people, one of the worst reasons to seek the craft is, I want to gain control of my life, right? So that's like the craft is not going to offer that, right? To
Yeah.
you, and in my initiates, I look for some semblance of stability, because the craft will destabilize in many ways, and challenge you.
Oh, it does. It actually does. And no, they are absolutely right. If you are doing the work, and if you have that contacted temple, and then if you really continue the work that you're doing in your own coven, that has certainly elevates the vibration of all of the members. And of course, that in itself, it's a protection enough for anything. I mean, you don't really need to do anything. They're right. Yeah.